Balatanya, Baruch Hashem, Chaf Dalet Tevis, B'siyat D'Shmaya. In Perek Yud Dalet in the Tanya, state that when a person has a desire that's trying to take him away from that bris, to try to take him away from the covenant in him and God, Shalev Chayim Ed Mis'aveh, Eizu Taiva Gashmis, Beheter Oy Be'isr Chas V'Shalom. When a person has a certain taiva, for anything, something that's the klippah, something that's concealing God in this world, that I'm engaging in, and it's covering over the relationship between God and I. So what do? He says, you're able to completely remove that thought, that desire from your consciousness by saying the following formula. You should put this as your screensavers, put this on your wall, say it stark. Says the Rebbe. Ba'amra laliboy, tell your heart. This is talking about the left side of the heart, the left chamber that's just trying to have taivas for things of this world, just for their own sake, and not for an ultimate relationship with God. Amen. What do you tell? Eineni writes Rasha. God, I don't want to be a Rasha. I don't want to be a wicked person. I don't want to be somebody that's concealing you. Afilu sha'achas. Even for 1 second, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I don't want to be that person. Ki eineni writes muvdal. I don't want to be separate. V'nifrad chas v'shalom me Hashem echad b'shum oifim. I don't want to separate myself from you in any way whatsoever. Anything that would create a separation between that intimacy, anything that would create a separation in that relationship, I don't want that, even for 1 second. It's never going to be worth it. Like a relationship of a husband and wife. There's never going to be one moment where the husband would say, it's worth it for me to do something that would make a break in the relationship. There's never going to be anything, even for 1 second, that would break that bond. That would be something that, just a little bit, I don't want any of it. I only want you, Hashem. I only want you. Kedir siv. And how do I know that if a person does something against God's will, that it makes a separation, it makes a mechitza? Because the Prophet teaches us that when we do an aveira, it makes a separation. It puts them a mechitza shel barzel. It makes this big steel reinforced block between God and I. I don't want that, even for 1 second. It's never going to be worth it. No matter how good the unkosher food looks, no matter how exciting the potential of looking at that Instagram page seems to present, it's never going to be worth it. It's never going to be worth it. Rakani writes Adov Kabai. Hashem, I only want to be connected to you. Nafshi ruch v'nishmasi, my nefesh, my ruch, my neshama, bislabshem b'shalosh levusha v'yisboach. I want my soul to dress up in its thoughts, speech and words, speech and action. Shehem ma'aseh dibur machshava b'Hashem v'toyrasai v'mitzvoisav me'av v'mesuter shebelibi l'Hashem k'may belev klalos Yisrael shenikra oyevei shemecha. That's all I want, Hashem. It's you. All I want is you. I never want to do one thing that would ever break that bond in the relationship. So you have to start thinking about this. When it comes to the bris, a yid has to remind himself, nothing's ever going to be worth it. Nothing's ever going to be worth it. And there's going to be a voice inside your head that's going to say, it's worth it. So you have to scream back, it's not worth it. I don't want to be separate from you, God, for 1 second, ever. It's never going to be worth it. Whatever the klippas are offering, it will never match up to a relationship with God. Whatever they're offering. This is a mantra. You have to remind yourself this. Whatever you're offering me, it's never going to be worth it. Ever. And it takes time. During these weeks now, we get it clear. Whatever the klippas are offering, it's nothing. It's not giving me anything that I want. I don't want anything that it's offering. Mamish. So we're holding in the section of Yitzias Mitzrayim. So says the Rebbe, Hatoichan apnimi shel Yitzias Mitzrayim in Beis Nase beprotus eitzel kol echad V'godla mailas yom eile. You know how big these days are? Of the parshas we're learning of leaving Egypt. Ki akrir me'oireres es ha'inyin shegam anachnu nizkel etzeitz meshib Mitzrayim v'lakabel es ha'torah v'lasaken hakol. It wasn't that once upon a time in a faraway land, the nation of Israel, O Israel, came out of the land of Egypt, and God with a strong hand and an outstretched arm took us out. And we're going to recount that once upon a time that happened to us. That's not it. Every year, with greater and greater strength, we come out of our internal Egypt, our internal slavery. Every year with stronger power and stronger force to get the Torah, to be free people, and to make that bris with God. That the only thing that I want is that relationship with God. Kihine pnimius inyan shib Mitzrayim. What does it really mean to be a slave? What does that mean? Shemitzrayim hikinui leklolos haklipus. It means that I bought in to a world that conceals God. You know, one of the things about the Egyptian slavery that Mesilas Yesharim points out was what was one of the tactics of Pharaoh in the slavery. He made us work so hard that we never had time to think. So the slave forgot that it was even a slave. It couldn't even imagine such a thing as coming out of Egypt. Like people who've been in jail for a very long time, they don't know that there's even another possibility. Or people that are in abusive relationships, may God help us, that there's not even an awareness. It's just, you can't even think of another possibility. It's total slavery. I can't even think maybe there's a God that can pull me out of this situation. It was totally covered over. Egypt means total, there's no other possibility. There's no God. And what is the salvation of that? That there's the Moses point inside of you, the Moshe Rabbeinu point that comes in and starts to break down the lies of Mitzrayim. This week, one of the plagues, who knows what the first three of them are? Dam, Tzvardeya, Kinim. Just ask my kids, they'll sing you the songs. So there's Dam, there's Tzvardeya, and Kinim. Kinim is the lice. What was interesting about the Kinim? Well, let's compare to the first two plagues. What was interesting about Dam and Tzvardeya is that the magicians of Egypt could replicate it, albeit to a lower degree. All of a sudden, what happened when Kinim came? They couldn't replicate the Kinim. Not only that, they couldn't even bring Kinim from another land to Egypt. And maybe they couldn't create it. But it says that their black magic wasn't able to bring them from another place, which would have also proved that we can also bring Kinim. Moshe Rabbeinu, maybe just because you brought lice from another area, we can also bring lice from another area. They couldn't touch it because it's explained that their black magic can't rest on something so small, smaller than a sa'ira, than a barley grain. And they said, Etzbe Elokim, it must be the finger of God. So even in Mitzrayim, the power of the plagues and the power of Moshe Rabbeinu is we go from a place that there's no way that God is involved to a slow breakdown. And the plagues start breaking down the reality that the Jews see that, wait a second, the sorcerers can't do this one. This has to be God. And even the Klippas themselves admit it must be God. And even with that, people harden their hearts. And then it gets stronger, and then it gets stronger. All the plagues are the systematic breaking down that there's only one reality, and that's God. And whatever the Klippas are offering will never be it. And And therefore, Heim Nikroi Mitzrayim. That's why it's called Mitzrayim. Miloshen Meitzar Yam. A narrowness for the ocean. Interesting. Yeah?
Klippas.
Klippas. Is the shells that block spiritual connection to God. Anything in your life that... Yeah. The Yetzer Hara is the classic klippa. Anything in your life that conceals. A klippa means a shell. Just like the shell conceals the fruit. The purpose of the pomegranate was to get to the seeds inside. The purpose of the mango is to get to that juicy, delicious mango on the inside. There's just one thing. There's a shell on top of it. I have to peel off the shell. The klippas. I want to eat some eggs. The purpose is I got this klippas. I have to take off the klippa. I want to eat a banana. I got to take off the shell. I want the banana. I want the egg. I need to peel off the shell. So the idea of a shell is always that thing which blocks what I'm looking for. And what are we looking for? Hashem. There's only one thing that we're all looking for. Klippas pop up in every single situation in our life, and it does the same thing in every situation. Just conceals God. So Mitzrayim is called Meitzar Yam. What does that mean? Called a constrained. Meitzar means like something is like constrained, like really tight, like a very tight place that the ocean can't enter in. What does that mean? Shehei mitzamtzimim es yama chochma. That Mitzrayim is the Meitzar Yam, that there's this thing called Yama Chochma. Yama Chochma isn't only a very good place to go to here in Yerushalayim. It's a concept that there is this ocean of wisdom, there's this ocean of relationship, this Yam, this ocean of connection, of beauty, that's just waiting for all of us. And Mitzrayim makes it impossible for that flow to come through. Makes it impossible to experience that light. Just like when a person feels very constrained, it's hard for them to open up. If they feel very constrained in a relationship spiritually, it's hard for them to feel comfortable to open up. Mitzrayim made us so constrained that we couldn't allow godly energy in. We couldn't open up to God. All the passageways were blocked, were tightened up. That's not good. That's Meitzar Yam. V'heim chaim rakas mitzias hateva. What were we living with there? All you see is the natural world. There's nothing but that. There's nothing but what you see. You're slaves, build the pyramids, and that's that. You go to work, 9 to 5, work for some job that you totally hate. Just, put in your time. The 9 to 5 is the modern day Mitzrayim. A guy hates his job. He's doing something else maybe unethical, but so you can retire at 70. There's so many things you could do. I'm not saying a person has 9 to 5 that they should leave it. I'm saying maybe you should though. You have to think what am I doing? Am I fulfilled in my job? You just have to take a step back. And by the way, most jobs are not 9 to 5. They're 9 to whatever. And you take your work home nowadays. And you never get off the thing. You're all the time. So you don't have the time to think I bought into this. Do I really like this? And okay, yeah, it's paying the bills. But is this my calling? By the way, paying the bills is a very holy thing. We all have to do it. It's a very, very necessary thing. But did I just get involved into a slave lifestyle without thinking this thing through? Or maybe everybody was doing it. They all went to work for the big corporation, so I just became another cog in the machine. What am I doing? What am I doing? Oh, Teva, that's what you do. That's what you do. A lot of people talk like this. Yeah, we all, we go to, this type of a college, and then we get this type of a job. And why? Who said you have to do that? Who said you have to do that? Is that what you really want to do? Maybe there's other ways to make a good living that doesn't go in the normal teva. When the Yama Chochma is very constricted, people just feel I just got to do because that's just what you got to do, because that's what you got to do. Why? Because that's what people do, Rabbi. Why? That's what people do. Yeah, but maybe there's another way to make a good living. Did you consider that? Yeah. Well, let's be creative. Let's talk about it. Let's sit down. Let's think it through. Maybe you should be the boss and not be the employee. Maybe you can think about an idea. Let's speak about it. The most famous book on finance, probably of all time, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a very good book. I suggest people read it. It's all about getting out of this teva of you just got to do what everybody's doing and just go through the same things that everybody's been doing, take the same handouts that everybody's been taking. It gets you to think in a whole different way. It's a good book. It's a good book. There's a lot of chachma in it. There's a lot of chachma in it. I'm just changing the whole way you think about, you don't just have to do what everyone does. But Mitzrayim says you just got to do what everybody does because that's what they do. But why? Why asking too many questions? Just fall in line and just do what everybody does. That's the world of Mitzrayim. And you can't think of anything outside the box. And you have to start thinking outside the box. You always have to make a parnasa, always have to make a living. It could be your living will be a 9-to-5 job. But you have to think about it. You have to have some lifestyle design. What is my mission here? What do I want to be doing in this world? And Mitzrayim was almim me'pnimis shela olam. Mitzrayim always takes away that there's a God factor involved. It always takes out, what, I can't, because if I close my business on Shabbos, so then, one less day of the week, so you're not going to make as much money. Like, that's just mathematics, Rabbi. Yeah, who runs the world? God said you can't work on Shabbos. So you think by going against God, you're going to make more money? That's Egyptian talk. That's Pharaoh talk. I think God is going to reward you for breaking Shabbos. And that's intelligent thinking right there. God is the one that gives you all the money. It's only Him. When you listen to God, you think He's going to mess you up? What kind of sick God do you believe in? God says, don't work on Shabbos, and I'll take care of you. Test God. He says, don't test me on certain things. But when it comes to monetary things, it says the more charity you give, the more God will give you. What do you mean? That's basic mathematics. If you give more money in your expenses pocket, then you'll have less money because you didn't have the incoming, and you have more expenses, so your total at the end will be less. That's just basic math. You're right, but you forgot one thing. God runs the world. And He could make it that your incoming increases. He could also make it that your expenses decrease because you were supposed to have a washing machine that was going to break that week. And that's another $1,500. That all of a sudden the washing machine, you have another $1,500 in there. It just kept going. And you had a watch that was going to break. And all of a sudden you got this inheritance that just kind of went through all of a sudden. You don't know. You think you're going to make more in the deal by not listening to God? That's Egyptian talk. Like Pharaoh said, who is this God? I don't know of this God you talk about. So the person starts thinking, who is this God? Yeah, I don't know about this God. I guess I have to work on Shabbos. Chas v'shalom. Be very aware when Pharaoh starts whispering into your ears and run away from it. The Baal Tanya said, I don't want to listen to you for 1 second. He makes all sorts of very interesting, alluring statements. Everything about Egypt is just very narrow. They don't look deeply. That type of thinking. They don't realize the big picture. Zoom out. There's God. Anything they can't fully see with their eyes, they say, no, it can't be. We say it is. The most real thing in the world is God. But when a person falls into clippers, and he thinks that this world is all there is, you got to work 7 days. Start thinking, you know what? These types of thoughts, they offer me something. You just locked yourself inside the walls of Egypt. You're back in Pharaoh's palace. You went to a fantasy world. I got to work on Shabbos. I got to make money. I got to work extra late and not go home and have dinner with my wife, even though that's important for our Shalom bias, because I gotta make. You're living in a fantasy land. And those thoughts, they get you to do crazy things. Like work 18-hour days at the law firm because I gotta get to the top. Who says you have to? But I have to. It makes us do crazy things. I gotta check everything all the time. Even while I'm eating dinner with my kids. I got to. I'm playing catch with my kid. Just 1 second, kid. I'm just gotta check this 1 second. This kid, 1 second. Daddy. 1 second. I'm gonna need a couple minutes on this one. Daddy, we came to play catch together. No. If you understood, you don't understand. No, you don't understand, Pops. He needs you. Your kid needs you. Egypt gets in and it messes with our brain. B'kol minyan yonim, ki hem gam ma'asikim ma'yusu b'taiva shel hevel v'gam ma'amisim alav. Hishtadlus yiseir b'nyani atev. They tell you to work like crazy. Because you actually think that to the amount that you work, that's what you're going to make. They forget that God gives you all your money. You have to put in some work because God made it that you have to put in some work. Either it's a kanas, because of Adam and Chav and Gan Eden, or it's part of the bria of Hishtadlus, you have to put something in. Or it's a punishment. But you got to do it. But it's not according to how much work you put in, is how much God's going to give you. So remember that. This person could forget their whole thing. Next paragraph. That's what it means to contaminate the covenant. Because a person's doing things he shouldn't do. He does things that God tells me not to do, as if the Averas are offering me something, that they're actually like, it's a mahalach. It's a mahalach. If a person says, this guy's an upright citizen, and this person, this guy, God forbid, murders. So you don't say that guy's got like a mahalach. Some people have their mahalach, their way of life is that they don't kill people. They do. That's like their mahalach. It's not a mahalach. You're sick. You're a sicko. It's not called like there's two options. There's one option, close to God. The guy was off that. It's not like he chose another mahalach. He thought the Yetzer Hara gave him a mahalach. That's what we think. It's like I'm in a mahalach of watching inappropriate things. That's what I do. I break shabbos. I'm secular. It's not a mahalach. I'm a murderer. That's my mahalach. Okay, I do my thing. It's my mahalach. It's not a mahalach. There's no mahalach like that. The Yetzer Hara doesn't give you a mahalach. It makes you believe it's a mahalach. That there's such a thing. Like this is my mahalach. He's not offering anything. The whole thing is a lie. The whole thing is a lie. And Egypt, like we're seeing right now in these parashas, starts to systematically collapse. Don't get caught in the darkness as it's collapsing. Last paragraph. Since he believes in the klippas, they get a power over him. Because the way that you go, God says, okay, you want to go with the mahalach of the klippas? I'm going to let you go in that way. Don't give anything to the klippas. Don't give anything. Anything. And the Balatanya is telling us, Shnei Zaman, the Shnei Or, the two great lights, the Teres HaNistur and the Teres HaNigla, which is all really one thing, that everything in your life is deep, is meaningful, God is there, everything is meaningful, everything is deep, is that if they offer you one thing, you say, I'm not listening to you for 1 second, you're not offering one thing, I never want to be separated from God, we should be saying this, Amen. Amen.